training registration. They have a registration center where you could go online and check if that institution is accredited by the Department of Higher Education and Training. The second thing you need to do is to verify qualifications on SAQA, which is the South African Qualification Authority. Check to see if that program is legitimate.
The life of Uganda's veteran opposition figure Kizza Besigye is in danger. That's detailed in a statement released by his wife Winnie Byanyima after visiting him in prison. The 69-year-old politician had been taken overnight to a medical facility without specifying what he was suffering from. A prison service spokesperson, however, denied that Besigye's health was dire, describing his visit to a doctor as a general check-up. Besigye has been in detention since November 2024 with his associate Obeid Lutale since they were both dramatically seized in Kenya and taken back to Uganda. The PFF leader has been charged in a military court with treason, which carries the death sentence, as well as illegal possession of a firearm and threatening national security. Lastly, security organization linked to Iran's interior ministry says that the death toll in the recent wave of anti-government protests stands at 3,117. The Foundation for Veteran and Martyrs says that almost 2,500 of those in the toll were martyrs and innocent victims. Some families of dead protesters say they were put under pressure to sign papers saying their loved ones were pro-regime. For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us at +27 11 714 4459. Channel Africa News, I am Onele Tsinsi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, CAF Interclub competitions return across the continent on Friday, while Novak Djokovic cruises into the third round of the Australian Open. Details coming up at 12:30.
This is Africa Update, your pulse to the continent. Stories shaping nations and voices driving change. Stay informed, stay connected, right here on Channel Africa, the African Perspective.
We're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa on DSTV's audio bouquet channel 802, OpenView channel 628 and on www.channelafrica.co.za, as well as on the SABC Plus app, available on the Apple and Google Play stores. You can also download the Channel Africa app on the Google and Apple Play stores. Join us in conversation on our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram, and subscribe on YouTube at Channel Africa 1. On Facebook at Channel Africa, you can also send us your comments and voice notes to +2763. That's 406. +2783. That's 288 6684. That's +2783 288 6684.
Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time.
Today on #Africa Update asks, a tense standoff erupted once again between anti-illegal immigration protesters and foreign nationals at Addington Primary School in Durban, in a coastal city in South Africa's KwaZulu-Natal province yesterday. Now, we want to know, what suggestions do you have to ensure every child receives a proper education, whether they are locals or foreign nationals? Share your thoughts and your views on all our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram at Channel Africa 1, on Facebook at Channel Africa. You can also send us your comments and voice notes on +2783 288 6684. #Africa Update asks.
Africa, voici Abedi.
Oui, c'est moi.
Abedi est un passionné de musique dans l'âme. Il a un goût pour toutes sortes de musique et passe ses journées à écouter Channel Africa.
J'aime beaucoup la musique africaine.
Ok. Devinez quoi? Channel Africa veut aider Abedi et les mélomanes du monde entier à découvrir encore plus de musique incroyable. C'est pourquoi Channel Africa appelle les artistes africains à soumettre leur musique. Chers artistes, n'oubliez pas de nous fournir toutes vos informations pertinentes à l'email adresse musique@channelafrica.co.za. Les soumissions sont votre chance d'être entendues, mais elles ne garantissent pas une playlist. Toutes les soumissions seront soigneusement examinées pour voir si elles répondent aux exigences de notre station. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo on Channel Africa.
It is 12:08 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. We begin in South Africa, where the 22-year-old scholar transport driver is now facing 14 counts of culpable homicide and reckless and negligent driving after 2 more learners died in hospital in the early hours of this morning. SABC News reporter Lopang Alamu now joins us on the line to give us the latest. Lopang, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Lulu, very good afternoon.
Now, tell us exactly what unfolded in court today.
Well, just to clarify, in fact, on those charges, he now faces 14 counts of murder and not culpable homicide anymore. Now, this after the NPA says they have prima facie evidence, which basically means they've got sufficient or enough evidence to charge him on murder charges instead of the initial charges of culpable homicide. Now, other charges include reckless and negligent driving, as well as driving an unlicensed vehicle, and another charge of driving without a valid permit. Now, that would be the PDP permit, and we do know that his expired in November, as we found out on Tuesday. Now, the 22-year-old Ayanda Dludla made his first appearance this morning, and that is when we then found out that he abandoned his bail application. Now, the matter has been postponed to the 5th of March for further investigations. Now, this comes after he won't be needing to go through the process of a bail application.
Now, were the families of the victims in court today?
Definitely. Quite a number of family members we saw make their way to court. We also did see some civil society movements, as well as transport driver organizations, as well as members from various political parties who also made their way to court. Of course, not everyone was able to go inside, but some family members made their way to court quite early, therefore were able to sit in the gallery. In fact, we could hear some murmurs as Guza said that he has a private attorney. Unfortunately for him, he was on no-show, and it seems as though going forward he would be using the services of legal aid.
And now, just with every he abandoned bail, obviously, and does he realize what has happened? Is he aware, in terms of what you observed, of the cases that he is now facing?
Yeah, he seemed quite aware, and when you look at his body language in court, he kept his head down most of the time. His hands were either kept together or on the side of his hips, and he also kept looking around a bit. Most of the court appearance, his head was down. He couldn't make eye contact with a number of people, and he was also really soft-spoken when he was asked to address the court. Now, that would be for obvious reasons, like confirming his name and if he's aware of the charges and his rights as well. And one might say that he is, or he does come across as someone who understands the magnitude of this particular matter. And we also did try to find out if any of his family members made their way to court, but we were unfortunately not able to verify that. It was really a short appearance, 10 to 15 minutes at most, because it's his first appearance. He abandoned his bail bid, and this would mean that not much can be said at the first bail application hearing. Now, we spoke to NPA spokesperson Lulu Gaboo, who confirmed that those murder charges come as a result of the information contained in that docket, where they say that the state can prove that they have sufficient evidence that this was indeed murder and not culpable homicide, because there was a bit of a mix-up or confusion on those charges. We did know that he would obviously be charged for reckless and negligent driving, but those murder charges were quite a shock for a number of people, especially considering the fact that 2 more learners lost their lives this morning. And you would hear the murmurs in the passage corridors of the court where people were either shocked and some emotions as well, where that part of the story is concerned. So the total number of those who have unfortunately lost their lives, those children who lost their lives, stands at 14. We understand that 1 more is currently in hospital. I think this has to do with the fact that those 2 who were also in intensive care have now succumbed to their injuries. Well, I also forgot to mention that he faces 3 counts of attempted murder on top of the other charges.
And when does he reappear in court? When is his next court appearance?
He comes back on the 1st of March. Now it was postponed for further investigation. So at this stage, that's when we're going to hear the start of a possible pre-trial, just because he does not have to go through that bail application process that might take a couple of days, weeks sometimes. So we do understand that he'll be back just over a month from now.
Lobang, thank you for joining us. We'll leave it there for today. That's SABC News reporter Lobang Alamu joining us on the line. It is 14 after 12 Central African time.
We are on Open Views Audio Bouquet. Channel 628. Africa Update on Channel Africa.
A tense standoff erupted once again between anti-illegal immigration protesters and foreign nationals at Addington Primary School in Durban, a coastal city in South Africa's KwaZulu-Natal province, yesterday. A group of March and March Operation Dudula and MK Party supporters resumed their demonstration at the school over the enrollment of foreign nationals. They are demanding that learners who are South African citizens be prioritized for admission at all schools. And for reaction, we are joined by Kopanang Africa Against Xenophobia spokesperson, Dr. Dale McKinley. Dr. McKinley, good afternoon and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Yes, good afternoon, Lulu. It's my pleasure.
Now, how does Kopanang Africa Against Xenophobia respond to concerns from local parents that foreign nationals are taking up limited spaces in schools, potentially disadvantaging South African citizens? What is the situation on the ground there in Durban, and what is Addington Primary School's response to these allegations?
Okay, well, you have 3 different questions there. I'll try to answer all of them. The first one is that we have responded by saying, first of all, that we have to adhere to our laws. What do our laws say? We are a law-driven country. We're a constitutional country. Our law says that every child has the right to an education. A child cannot be blamed for whatever other issues their parents might be involved in, or whether there's documentation or not, and whether there are foreign nationals, which of course is not a crime, nor does not prevent anyone simply because they are foreign national from having their kids to go to school. So we have to follow the law. The Department of Education has reiterated this, and they have indicated, including the Addington Primary School, by the way, that the claims by March on March and Operation Dula are completely false. They have not, Operation Dula and others have not backed up their claims with any evidence, and including the Addington has shown that their lists show that 65% of all of their students are South African citizens. And the fact is that in that area where Addington Primary School is, there are a lot of foreign nationals that live there and have lived there for many years. And the general practice in most schools is that children in that area will try to go to that closest school. So this is nothing new. Our response to them is stop trying to prevent children, stop trying to victimize children, engage in dialogue, because the real problems are not with foreign nationals. The real problems are with issues of infrastructure, with classrooms, with lack of teachers, and with online systems of registration. If we can improve these things and deal with them, then every child will have the right to go to school, and we won't have these kinds of conflicts.
Now, there's talk about the Department of Education, releasing data or being transparent when it comes to the different demographics in terms of the schooling, whether it's foreign nationals and locals and so on. Do you think that is even legal?
Well, it's not. You have to be very careful because we have privacy laws as well, and POPIA, the Protection of Personal Information Act. So you can't just give out lists of kids and others with names and these things. But what you can do is you can show that your database indicates that the identification of so many learners in this particular school is South African citizens, and these are foreign national. The Gauteng Department of Education has done this already. They have disabused Operation Dadula's myths around these claims and said that it, in fact, overall, in terms of Gauteng, I think it's up to 80-something% are South African citizens and children. So we should be evidence-based, but we have to be careful that in doing so and being transparent that the Department of Education doesn't violate the rights of learners and parents at the same time.
Mm-hmm. And just looking at, for lack of a better word, but the targeting of Addington Primary School in this particular instance, what can be done differently by the Department of Education and in ensuring that there are enough schooling facilities for each and every child in this country?
Yeah, I think that's the fundamental question, Lulu, is that the real problem lies in the fact, and we know this in our own province here in Gauteng, as well as in KZN and most other provinces, that the educational system, particularly primary educational, is in a bad state. The infrastructure, many kids are going to school without the necessary infrastructure, lack of teachers, crowded classrooms. And so what we need is a reprioritization of expenditure and recruitment and capacitation within the department, and particularly in those areas that are very underserviced. So we're concentrating here on urban areas, but the rural schools are even in worse situations oftentimes. So this is what's needed. This crisis is not anything new, but we need political will and a redirection of budgetary and programmatic priorities within the department to ensure that it's not that there's not going to be some problems. There are already going to be hiccups. We have lots and lots of growth and population growth in our country, and all children are not going to be able to go to exactly the school that they want. But I think we all would agree that constitutionally every child should be in school and should have the right to a decent education. So that's where the challenge lies. And when we deal with those problems, we'll deal with the conflictual problems where people are scapegoated, I think unintentionally sometimes, and understandably so, but in a wrong direction.
Something as well that needs to be highlighted is the issue where we look at the legalities when it comes to what in terms of the international obligations that South Africa risks in violating if public schools were to deprioritize or exclude children based on nationality or documentation status.
Indeed. I mean, and this applies, when you talk about international law, it means it applies internationally. So there are certain standards. And one of those standards that comes out of our own struggle against apartheid and the fact that many South Africans found themselves overseas during the apartheid years and at the behest and hosting in other countries, that if you're escaping political persecution, if you're escaping economic issues and others, and you're there, yes, sometimes the documentation is a problem, and we do have to enforce our laws in that respect. But you cannot punish children in this particular case, because it makes no difference whether or not you might have been waiting for documentation for 6 to 8 months, and your child is not going to go to school. That's not right. So the obligations that we have is to make sure that every child has the right to go to school regardless of that, and fix those problems. And if we don't do that, then not only are we violating international law, we're violating our own constitution. And that's unacceptable, I think we would all agree.
Just in wrapping up very briefly, are there any plans as an organization to engage stakeholders to address these concerns and find lasting resolutions?
Absolutely. We have been engaging the Department of Basic Education, both provincially and nationally. We've also been meeting with principals and student government bodies in particular schools that have been targeted or ones where there seems to be some conflict, particularly here in Gauteng. And there are other groups otherwise in Cape Town, Durban, and a few other places that are doing the same. So we need to find proper solutions, legal solutions, and developmental solutions. The answer is not to prevent kids from going to school and not to create more conflict where it's not necessary. And I think we can do this, and I think the department understands that.
Dr. McKinley, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Thank you. My pleasure.
That's Kopanang Africa Against Xenophobia spokesperson Dr. Dale McKinley joining us on the line.
As 2025 draws to a close, we pause to honor the spirits that connect us. The festive season reminds us of what truly matters: family, community, and unity. No matter where you gather or reflect, Channel Africa is with you, bringing you stories and voices that are shaped by the African perspective.
Something significant happened on this day. Asanda, you were a baby, I'm sure. I'm not even sure if you were born. No, you were a baby, yeah.
Yoga. Matseko is still trying to convince me and look me over.
I've done that already, and you're going to come now on the journey.
I will try.
From all of us to all of you, may your season be safe and peaceful. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Africa Update, your daily dose of African insights with Lulu Gaboo on Channel Africa.
It is 23 after 12 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. US President Donald Trump has ruled out the use of military force in his bid to assert control over Greenland, but insisted that no other country is capable of securing the Danish territory. Now, speaking at the World Economic Forum in Davos on Wednesday, Trump adopted a confrontational tone, sharply criticizing European allies over issues ranging from renewable energy and environmental policy to immigration and global security. His remarks came a day after several world leaders, including French President Emmanuel Macron, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, pushed back against Trump's rhetoric and his threats to impose sweeping tariffs on allies who failed to meet U.S. demands. Threats he has now withdrawn. For further analysis, we are joined by a geopolitical analyst, Daimon Siulupwa from Zambia. Daimon, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you.
Now, President Trump adopting a confrontational and often unpredictable posture toward allies while making assurances on majority security issues. From a geopolitical standpoint, can he be trusted as a reliable partner, and how should allies interpret this approach?
I think trust is not an operative word when it comes to President Trump. Predictability probably is. Allies should understand that Trump is consistent only in one thing, is prioritizing the U.S. interest over allies or anybody else or anything else. So they must stop expecting emotional reassurance and instead deal with him through hard situations the way he's dealing with them. You know, those who adapt, will survive. Those who rely on goodwill, they won't get anywhere. Trump will just expose them. So he cannot be trusted.
Now, his Davos speech marked with sharp rhetoric and mixed signals. What do you make of this unpredictable style of communicating, and how does it affect U.S. credibility and diplomatic coherence on a global stage?
It obviously weakens the diplomatic coherence, but on the other part, it strengthens the bargaining power. I mean, it's obvious he deliberately does that so that he can keep his allies off balance. So he's. Look, it's terrible to communicate, but that's what he's doing. The cost is long-term credibility of the U.S. is going to be on the off side of things.
Now, just looking at what is happening with regards to China and Russia, President Trump frequently describing these two countries as major security threats, yet he has also referred to China as a good country, in inverted commas, led by a good leader, in inverted commas, and is expected to meet President Xi Jinping in April. What is driving this back and forth rhetoric, and is it strategic or just transactional?
It is actually transactional realism here. It's not confusion. I think Trump sees China and Russia less as ideological enemies, more of as competitors to be managed. Praising China while labeling them as a threat allows him to extract some concessions without closing the negotiation, because he's leaving room to discuss. I mean, his expected engagement with Jinping reflects the deal-making instinct that is using, not strategic contradiction, but to push things inside. You must remember that Trump is also a shrewd businessman. You know.
Yeah. So just there are two issues that I'd like us to touch on very quickly before we run out of time. The issue of Greenland and security and citing concerns over Chinese and Russian influence. What is the issue here generally about global security where there has never been an issue before? Why now?
Okay. With a short answer, security is not a public justification. You know, it's a strategic dominance that's the real objective. I mean, you see, Greenland offers control over Arctic routes, rare earth minerals, and military positioning against China and Russia. So obviously, that's where Trump is more focused.
And the issue of Africa. You're looking at countries like Egypt and Ethiopia wanting to bring them together to iron out or deal or resolve their dispute over Ethiopia's grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, which both Egypt and Sudan consider a serious threat to vital water supplies.
Okay, so if you look at what is really happening with the grand Ethiopian Renaissance, you know, Africans have been discussing that problem for quite a while. You know, African institutions have engaged on it for years. What has failed is not African capacity, but the absence of faith, mutual trust, and enforcement mechanism. When people like Donald Trump come in and trying to be mediators and they're trying to make Africa think, make Africa look like they have failed. In essence, they're just reinforcing that they're trying to meddle in African affairs because of probably the benefits that will accrue for them.
Well, Diamond, we have run out of time and are going to have to leave it there for today. But thank you so much for joining us on Africa Update.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
That was geopolitical analyst Diamond Siulupwa joining us from Zambia. It is 12:30 and it's time for the news.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Lulu. Guinea-Bissau transitional authorities have announced that presidential and legislative elections will be held on December 6, marking the first official electoral timetable since the November 2025 coup. The South African Gauteng Provincial Police have confirmed that 2 more learners involved in the Vanderbijlpark scholar transport crash have succumbed to their injuries, putting the death toll at 14. U.S. President Donald Trump will today launched his Board of Peace, originally intended to assist in ending the Gaza war, but which he now sees having a wider role that Europe and some others fear will rival or undermine the United Nations. Channel Africa News, I'm Helen Zinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective. Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
And a very good afternoon from the sports desk. I am Mosibu Dimakura with your latest sports news at the Sawa. So the Total Energies CAF Champions League 2025-2026 as well as the CAF Confederation Cup 2025-2026 will resume on Friday as match day 3 of the group stages gets underway across Africa. Now, following the conclusion of the Africa Cup of Nations tournament in Morocco over the weekend, attention now will turn back to club football this coming weekend, where Africa's leading sides will resume their continental campaigns. So the CAF Champions League returns with a strong opening on match day 3. That's on Friday tomorrow, as record champions Al Ahly will host Tanzania's Young Africans in Cairo, Egypt. Later on Friday, South African giants Mamelodi Sundowns will welcome Sudan's Al Hilal Omdurman in the capital city Pretoria, and a fixture expected to shape the Group C standings at the midpoint of the campaign. Now the restart will also feature some marquee fixtures, including the high-profile Group A clash between RS Berkane of Morocco as well as the title holders Pyramids FC of Egypt. That's on Saturday. Then on Sunday, Esperance de Tunis of Tunisia will face off with the Tanzanian side Simba SC, while Stade Milan of Mali have a date with Petro de Luanda of Angola. This also in the CAF Champions League. Further afield now, the Women's Super League has warned that FIFA's proposed Women's Club World Cup could be catastrophic for domestic football. Now, the inaugural tournament is scheduled for the 5th up until the 30th of January in 2028, right in the middle of the 2027-2028 Women's Super League season. Now, the global competition will feature 16 teams, including up to 6 European clubs. From England, Champions League holders Arsenal are guaranteed a place, with Chelsea also in contention based on the current coefficients. Now, concerns have though been raised by other European leagues about the disruption to their calendar. On to some cricket news now. England as well as Afghanistan both finished the group stages of the ICC Under-19 Men's Cricket World Cup unbeaten. Now, England thrashed Scotland after Ben Myers smashed 119 of 117 balls, the joint highest individual score in this year's tournament and also in the tournament's history, and the best ever by an England batter. Myers also shared a 188-run stand with Joseph Moore, who hit 81 runs, as England posted a commanding total just before sealing a victory by 48 runs. Afghanistan, meanwhile, also maintained their perfect record with a win over Tanzania, also ensuring both sides head into the Super 6 stages as strong contenders for the semi-finals of this year's global showpiece. Well, Novak Djokovic knows that if he is to make history at this year's Australian Open, he will need to conserve his energy. Now, the Serbian great is bidding for a 25th Grand Slam title. That will take him one clear of Margaret Court's all-time singles record. The 38-year-old has spoken about needing now to protect his body for the latter stages of major tournaments, having also been hampered by injury in 3 of his 4 slams semi-finals just last year. A leg injury caused an early end to Djokovic's Australian Open semi-final last year, while he also was hampered by a hip injury at Wimbledon as well as fatigue at the US Open. He then dropped only 7 games in a 6-3, 6-2, 6-2 victory over Italian qualifier Francesco Marzlelli in the second round on a warm Melbourne afternoon earlier on today. Now, Djokovic beat Spain's Pedro Martinez by the same scoreline on Monday, marking his first time that he has not dropped a set in the first 2 rounds at Melbourne Park since 2003. Now, victory over Botic van der Slaach this coming Saturday would also see him win his 400th Grand Slam singles win. No other player, by the way, has achieved this major feat. So, Novak Djokovic, of course, is in search of history. This is what he had to say about his opponent that he played earlier on today, also admitting that he knew nothing about his opponent.
Yeah, I didn't know much about him until yesterday, actually, a few days ago. It happens more often than not these days for me. But nevertheless, respect is always there, and I don't underestimate anyone. And he's got the big serve, he's got the big game. Obviously, he's still lacking experience on a big stage, but he's got the game to go far and to go, high in the rankings. So I wish him that.
All right, so that concludes your sports news this hour. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, do remember to send us an email. That's to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Call us as well. The newsroom line is +27 11714 4459. I'm back with more sports news with the Upside team in the next hour. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Mosibu Di Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Let's just do it.
Your life just got easier. Get the Channel Africa app and take us wherever you go. Catch the latest news, enjoy your favorite shows, stream the music you love, and stay connected to the continent. All in one spot, right in your pocket. Simple, quick, and always with you. The Channel Africa app. Download it now on iOS and Android. For 60 years, Channel Africa has connected the continent. Celebrate the journey. Celebrate the African perspective. Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you, Lulu. Good afternoon. It is exactly 56 years since the first meeting of the World Economic Forum in Davos. Founded by Klaus Schwab, the forum was conceived as a platform to debate ideas and confront the pressing issues of the day. This year's gathering, however, takes place in a world transformed, marked by heightened geopolitical tensions, rising tariffs, and growing global fragmentation. These shifts could fuel inflation and increase volatility in exchange rates. The question is, how prepared is South Africa's economy to cushion the impact? South Africa's Reserve Bank Governor Lesitsha Kganyago says the main focus is on price stability mandates and pursuing new inflation target with vigor.
For us, it is not just about inflation, it's also about economic activity. And our response in South Africa is three-pronged. Firstly, is that the central bank must focus on its price stability mandate, and importantly, that we pursue the new inflation target with vigor and make sure that inflation expectations are embedded. And we are able to do that because we do have the monetary policy space. So monetary policy remains focused on dealing with inflation.
South Africa's Small Business Development Minister Stella Ndabeni is optimistic about the country's economic future, highlighting its improved economic position, which will help in strengthening investor confidence. Key recent developments include the stabilization of electricity supply, removal from the Financial Action Task Force's FATF grey list, and an upgrade of the sovereign credit rating by rating agency S&P Global. Ndabeni is part of the SA delegation led by Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. She says there can never be inclusive economic growth without small businesses.
Our interest is to ensure that as the capital is here flooded in Davos, big corporates, developed countries, ours is to say the small businesses should be at the table of the discussions and not be left behind. We do believe as Team SA that there can never be a resilient and inclusive economic growth if it's at the exclusion of small businesses.
Zambia is set to host the Continental Energy and Infrastructure Investment Forum. The 4-day summit is scheduled to take place in Lusaka from the 2nd to the 5th of February. It will convene 2 days of high-level conferencing and structured business-to-government engagements, followed by 2 days of strategic site visits to priority energy and infrastructure assets across the country. It is a historic milestone for the flagship Pan-African platform dedicated to advancing energy security, infrastructure development, and regional industrialization, as it will be hosting for the first time. The director of the Sub-Saharan Trade Hub, Malcolm Shabala.
In terms of the forum, we'll be looking at a number of critical areas or thematic areas that are really, really important to Africa's energy and infrastructure development. So we'll be looking at the case for coal, and you need to look at this in context of what has been happening recently. You know, in this part of Africa, has been hit with droughts, and we sit on quite a huge resource of coal. And we know that there's been a negative connotation around coal previously, but things have since moved on. There is clean coal technology, which we will be exploring and see how then coal can be used to fill in the gap in terms of energy deficits.
Global demand for smartphones, personal computers and gaming consoles is expected to shrink this year as companies from Britain's Raspberry Pi to HP Incorporation raise sticker prices to offset surging memory chips costs. The rapid build-out of artificial intelligence infrastructure by US tech firms such as OpenAI, Alphabet-owned Google and Microsoft has absorbed much of the world's memory chip supply, pushing up prices as manufacturers prioritize components for higher margin data centers over consumer devices. The world's three largest producers of memory chips, Samsung, SK Hynix and Micron, say they were struggling to keep up with demand as they reported rosy quarterly earnings on the back of surging prices for the semiconductors. In other news, Malaysia's AirAsia X is targeting $500 million to $600 million in debt restructuring after the budget airline this week bought the short-haul aviation business of Capital A. AirAsia X, the medium-haul affiliate of Capital A's AirAsia, plans to combine the firm's 7 airlines under one banner. Now, let's shift our focus to financial indicators at this hour. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,418 naira, Botswana 13.22. Kenya, the dollar is 128 shilling 18. In Zambia, 28 kwacha 07. The BRICS countries, the $1 in Brazil is at 5.35, Russia 77 rubles 39, India 91 rupee 49, China 71.96, South Africa the rand is at 16 rand 33 cents. $1 is 74 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Commodities, gold is at $4,824, platinum at $2,456 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil, $65.34 a barrel. That is all for now. For any stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or you can call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chanduko Ligege.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
madapiri pazoshitika
madotolo oposa 1500 amene amagwira ntchito yaulere mu zipatala zaboma mu dziko la Zambia azanyanyala ntchito lachisanu sabata yammawa ndipo Daniel Shabanda kutambasula nkhaniyi.
Madotolo oposa 1500 amene amagwira ntchito mopanda malipiro apamwezi dziko la Zambia akuyembekezera kuyamba kunyanyala ntchito. Ichi ndi chifukwa chakuti boma lalephera walemba ntchito monga mmene lidawalonjezera. Channel Africa News yalankhulana ndi mkulu wa bungwe la madotolo la Resident Doctors Association of Zambia, Dr. Paul Chiwe. Akugomeza kuti madotolo ambiri amene akugwira ntchito mu zipatala zaboma akugwira ntchito yaulere ndipo ali ndi chiyembekezo chakuti tsiku lina adzalembedwa ntchito ndi boma.
zochitika pa nthawi ya 6 koloko kufikira 7 koloko madzulo lolemba mpaka lachisanu ndi madapiri.
Growing with Africa for 6 years. Channel Africa celebrates 2026 with the African Perspective. Your window to the continent and beyond. Africa Update. Only on Channel Africa. Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
It is 12:46 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. Guinea-Bissau's transitional authorities have announced that presidential and legislative elections will be held on December the 6th, marking the first official electoral timetable since the November 2025 coup. This move is closely watched by the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, which has been pressing for a shorter inclusive transition. Tutongubeni has more.
The December 6th date for Guinea-Bissau's presidential and legislative election was set by presidential decree signed by Transitional President General Horta Inter. It states that the vote will be organized under conditions that will be progressively put in place to ensure elections that are free, fair, and transparent. The announcement comes as the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, has intensified diplomatic efforts in recent weeks to push the junta toward a rapid restoration of constitutional order. Earlier this month, a high-level ECOWAS mission led by Sierra Leonean President Julius Maada Bio, the bloc's current chair, traveled to the capital Bissau to press transitional leaders on the transition timeline. While the transitional authorities have now set an election date, ECOWAS has yet to issue an official reaction to the December 2026 timeline. The regional bloc had previously rejected an initial transition calendar proposed by the coup leaders and continues to demand the release of all political detainees as well as guarantees for the protection of national institutions by the ECOWAS mission in Guinea-Bissau, ECOMIB. It has not ruled out targeted sanctions should it deem the process obstructed. General Horta Inter seized power on November 26 last year after the military interrupted the electoral process just 24 hours before the official announcement of results from the November 23 presidential and legislative elections. Those polls had been described as free, transparent, and peaceful by ECOWAS and several international observer missions. Following the coup, ECOWAS suspended Guinea-Bissau from its decision-making bodies and called for a civilian-led transition. The transitional authorities later adopted a political charter of the transition on November 27 last year, which now serves as the legal basis for the December electoral timetable. For Channel Africa News, I am Tutongo Bene in Johannesburg.
It is 12:48 Central African Time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. Join us in conversation on our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram at Channel Africa 1, on Facebook at Channel Africa. You can also send us your comments and voice notes on +27 288 66 27 83 288 6684. Let me repeat that. It's +27 83 288 6684. And you can remember to use the hashtag Africa Update. A lot to come up, and with the show almost at the end, but we still have a lot to cover. And, in terms of the question of the day, we are looking at the tense standoff erupting once again between anti-illegal immigration protesters and foreign nationals at Addington Primary School in Durban, a coastal city in South Africa's KwaZulu-Natal province yesterday. And we want to know what suggestions you have to ensure every child receives a proper education, whether they are locals or foreign nationals. And Matako is here, and we are going to be coming to her after this quick break.
Darubini ya Afrika na I am Henry Shakif.
Tumeona chapisho mapema hii leo ya kwamba Wizara ya Mambo ya Nje ya nchini Marekani imesema inapitia upya uhusiano wake na nchi ya Tanzania. Pengine taarifa hii imepokelewaje na wananchi wa Tanzania?
Cha kwanza tumeiona taarifa ambayo imetoka hii leo. Sisi kwetu taarifa hii haikutushangaza wala haikutushtua, kwa sababu tulishaona taarifa kama hiyo imetoka kwenye ubalozi wa Marekani nchini Tanzania, ikiwa imetolewa na Bwana Tom Pigott.
Umezungumza kwa kina kabisa. Haya ni malalamiko ambayo yamekuwa yakijitokeza mara kwa mara. Unadhani sasa wana hoja ya msingi?
Unauliza maswali mazuri sana na maswali ya tafakari. Maswali ambayo hayawezi kujibiwa kwa dakika moja au kwa siku moja. Ni maswali yanayohitaji utafiti, yanayohitaji kusoma.
Darubini ya Afrika kila Jumatatu hadi Ijumaa kuanzia saa 11 kamili hadi saa 12 kamili jioni majira ya Afrika ya Kati.
Your window to the continent and beyond. Africa Update. Only on Channel Africa. Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
I would say a happy Thursday to Matako Mosito of The Upside. How are you today?
It's a Thursday. I'm feeling good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thursdays are always good.
Yes,
one more sleep before Friday.
Thank you.
All right, what's coming up today?
The prelude to the weekend, indeed. Okay, so here we are, opening gateways into lifestyle content for the African continent. Mm-hmm. And to fit that bill, we're talking all things fashion. House of Lafoy. I don't know if you've heard of them.
House of Lafoy.
Yeah, very fascinating fashion brand. It translates to, I just don't know what the language is, House of Faith. So the founder of Lafoy is going to be joining us in studio, and we're going to find out about just locally produced fashion. I think we live in a time when fast fashion is the thing, cheap imports. So to actually have good quality
pieces,
locally made pieces is always a good conversation, especially when we look at reproducing people economically and sort of imagining what textile spaces on the African continent are going to be like for the now and the future. So it's going to be quite a wonderful conversation, that and so much more. We're catching up with Tebogo. He's on a cruise.
Yes, I know, but we've been struggling to chat to him because the waters and where he is, satellite and so on, there's a bit of instability there, but so I saw on social media where he posted the rooms and what it looks like, and it looks very nice. It's just it's a very interesting one.
Yeah, it's just such a pity they're not going to be able to make the stop at the Mozambican islands.
Yeah,
but they are on the ship, and there's ocean views.
I did see, and I think there was a lot of wind, so it's also very interesting. And we'll get all the feedback, I guess, as well when he's back in studio.
Yes, he's probably going to have more footage to share with us. So we're going to cross over there as well.
All right, all that and more coming up at the top of the hour. That's with Mateko Musito and Tebogo Likuleni. We continue on Africa Update. Join us on all our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram, and subscribe on YouTube at Channel Africa 1, on Facebook at Channel Africa. You can also send us your comments and voice notes to +2763. That's 406 9126. Hashtag Africa Update, and let us know which country you're in.
Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802. Keep Africa in your hands. Connect to our website for all your news, sports, and cultural updates. channelafrica.co.za. Africa Update on Channel Africa.
The preliminary report of the Vanderbijl Park crash that caused the deaths of 14 learners and injured many is expected to be released today. Recently, the Minister of Transport, Barbara Creecy, embarked on a back-to-school campaign with a specific focus on scholar transport. Out of that campaign, they took a decision to embark on an unannounced law enforcement blitz in schools to conduct scholar transport inspections starting this week. Our Minister of Transport, Barbara Creecy, elaborates on the safety and compliance of scholar transport vehicles.
These operations are going on across the country. There have been meetings with all of the MECs and the heads of the Department of Transport since Tuesday, and obviously we are having operations across the country. Of course, these operations tend to be very diffuse in nature and also very labor intensive, because most of these operators go to individual schools. They don't congregate at an exchange place. So it means that enforcement operators have to be going to those schools themselves. But I think it's, even though it's labor intensive and even though it's going to take a long time, I think it's very important, because we do need to raise public awareness about the importance of scholar transport vehicles, public or private, being safe, being safely operated. And of course, everybody in the ecosystem has got a role to play. Department of Transport, law enforcement operators, school principals and education authorities, and of course also parents themselves. And I think that through the work that we're going to be doing, we always focus on public education, and we want to be enabling parents to have a better grip on how they can assess whether a vehicle and the operator is safe for their children, and we will be focusing a lot on that. I'm also pleased that Gauteng has set up a helpline so that where parents have concerns about operators, they can contact the helpline, and I think that helps us with the overall campaign to ensure that private scholar transport vehicles are safer for learners and for parents. There have been 3 arrests, and the arrests were for significant overloading. So people carrying 25 children in a vehicle licensed to carry 15. And there have been 60 vehicles impounded. Those vehicles will be taken to our pound. There will be explanation to the operators how they can get the vehicles released and how they can then legalize their operations and ensure that we are providing safe transport for children.
And that was South Africa's Transport Minister Barbara Creecy ending that report. A high-stakes meeting between Russia and the US is scheduled to take place in Moscow today. President Vladimir Putin will be greeting US envoy Steve Witkoff, who was quoted as saying that the work on a Russia-Ukraine peace plan is 90% complete. Dasha Chenichova filed this report.
The Kremlin has confirmed that President Vladimir Putin is set to meet U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff in Moscow on Thursday. Witkoff confirmed the talks as well, saying that Russia itself requested this meeting. Witkoff says he will be traveling to the Russian capital alongside Jared Kushner, the son-in-law of U.S. President Donald Trump, who worked closely on the Gaza peace talks. The two last visited Moscow in December. According to Witkoff, recent weeks have brought many successes on the Russia-Ukraine discussions, though he acknowledged that territorial disputes remain the biggest obstacle. The upcoming Kremlin meeting follows more than 2 hours of talks in Davos between Witkoff and the Russian presidential envoy Kirill Dmitriev. Discussions both sides described as constructive. Dmitriev said Russia's position is gaining wider understanding internationally, while the Kremlin signaled that talks will also cover trade, investment and economic cooperation alongside the proposals for ending the conflict in Ukraine. Dasha Cherneshova, SABC News, Moscow.
Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo on Channel Africa.
We're coming to you live on DSTV's audio bouquet channel 802, OpenView channel 628 and on www.channelafrica.co.za, as well as on the SABC Plus app, available on the Apple and Google Play stores. You can also download the Channel Africa app on the Google and Apple Play stores. Now join us in conversation on our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram, and subscribe on YouTube at Channel Africa 1. On Facebook at Channel Africa, you can also send us your comments and voice notes on +27 83 288 6684. #Africa Update. And that's how we wrap the show today. It's been a good one. Let's do this again tomorrow and continue with us on all our social media platforms. Be safe. Bye-bye.
Be inspired. Stay informed. Channel Africa, the beauty of life.